Jujutsu Kaisen is pretty well known for how unfair its fights are in the series, especially when it comes to jumping opponents. I mean, the series nickname is literally called Jump Kaisen for a reason, and that's because fair battles don't exist in Jujutsu Kaisen. And who lives up to this standard better than our beloved main character, Yuji Itadori? Yuji has had more fights where he's jumped someone than he has when he's fought somebody one-on-one. In fact, the only two fights I can think of off the top of my head where Yuji fought someone with no help whatsoever would be the random grasshopper he fought in the beginning of Shibuya and Choso. Every other fight that comes to mind, Yuji has had help. So since Yuji jumps his opponents more than anyone else in the entire series, I decided to make a video ranking Yuji's duo partners from worst to best. Now, multiple factors will come into play, such as success rate, the amount of times they fought together, and also how much chemistry they have between each other. But with all that being said, let's get right into this ranking. Now, just to preface, I might have missed like one or two duos that Yuji had. I did my best to try to skim through the series again, see how many people Yuji teams up with. He teams up with a lot of people. My current list has 7. But you guys let me know in the comments if I missed anyone. Anyways, starting off with the number 7 spot as Yuji's worst duo partner, that would be him and Higuruma. This one hurts to put at number 7 because I remember when Yuji and Higuruma were coming down to fight Sukuna, everyone was hyped. Everyone dubbed them as the judge and the executioner. This was going to be the duo that was going to take out Sukuna. And yet, they didn't really do much together. It's honestly not even their fault. They just kind of got instantly separated by Sukuna. Sukuna targeted Higuruma alone, and Higuruma by himself couldn't do anything against Sukuna. And then by the time Yuji got there, it was already too late, and Yuji couldn't even pull off using Higuruma's executioner's blade. So nothing really happened between this duo. They didn't really work together well, and their entire plan sort of backfired on them. So because of their just immense failure together, I'm ranking them in the number 7 spot. Coming in at the number 6 spot is going to be Yuji and Megumi. Now, I know it's kind of surprising that the protagonist and the deuteragonist are ranking this low, because usually in anime, the protagonist and the main side character have the most chemistry with one another out of everyone else. But Yuji and Megumi have only had one fight together from what I can remember, and it was during the Shibuya arc. Now, for those of you who don't remember the fight they had, they fought against Jiro Awasaka together, and even though in the end they won this fight, the problem is who they were fighting. Jiro Awasaka is not that impressive of a sorcerer. Yes, he was strong at the time, but looking back at it in retrospect, he wasn't really anything special. And the fact that they still somewhat struggled against him just goes to show that this duo doesn't really work that well together. Megumi in fact states during this fight that fighting the enemy isn't the hard part here. It's being able to work together with Yuji. So that just goes to show that his and Yuji's chemistry isn't really all there. And it's kind of hard to rank them any higher because this is the only fight they had where they were working as a team, and Megumi straight up says that they don't work well together already. So I think the number 6 spot is a very fair ranking for this duo. Now, coming in the number 5 spot, I got a sort of controversial pick, but it's gonna be Yuji and Nobara. Now, I know a bunch of people are gonna swarm my comments saying, how can they be this low, especially considering that Nobara is helping Yuji against Sukuna? But I'm not really taking the Sukuna fight into account as them being a duo, because Nobara really isn't on the battlefield. All she's doing is hitting resonance on Sukuna's finger, which is actively weakening Sukuna. There's really no chemistry involved with them in this current fight, meaning the only other fight they had was against the special grade curses back during season 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, I'll admit, they were cooking in that fight. They were going 2-on-2 against 2 special grade curses, and they weren't even that strong during season 1. And they finished the fight off with a double black flash. So their chemistry is 100% there. But the reason why I'm ranking them in the number 5 spot is because I feel like all of Yuji's other fights where he fought with someone else their opponent was so much stronger than the special grade curses that Nobara and Yuji fought. If the curses or their opponent was slightly stronger, then I can definitely see myself ranking them higher than number 5. But because they weren't, I think the number 5 is a good spot for them. And since I'm not even taking the Sukuna fight into account, since they're not really being a duo in that fight, then I have really nothing else to base their fighting abilities off of. Coming in at the number 4 spot is going to be Yuji and Nanami. And even though this duo has only had one fight together, which was against Mahito, I think that one fight is enough to have them be in the top 4. Especially because their fight against Mahito is what made Jujutsu Kaisen be known as Jump Kaisen. Nobody saw disrespect on that level until Yuji and Nanami jumped Mahito. Mahito could not even catch his breath against them. He was getting absolutely pummeled from both sides by both Yuji and Nanami. Their chemistry was on another level, and the fact they were going up against a disaster curse just goes to show how much of a powerhouse this duo truly was. I mean, you can't tell me that their fight against Mahito wasn't one of the most satisfying beatdowns in all of anime history. And even though it may be only one fight that they had together, the fact that they performed to that level against a disaster curse is more than enough to place them in the top 4 and solidify themselves as a really solid duo. Now we're officially entering the top 3, and in my number 3 spot, I have Yuji and Maki. Now, again, much like Yuji and Nanami, they've only had one fight together, but that fight was against Sukuna. Granted, it wasn't the strongest version of Sukuna. Sukuna had just transferred himself into Megumi's body, and his output was only at 10% at that point, but still, they were really cooking against Sukuna there. Sukuna's cursed energy output may have only been at 10%, but his physical capabilities were still 100% there, and they were still keeping up with him in hand-to-hand combat and everything that Sukuna was throwing at them. Now, I do think that Maki was carrying this fight slightly, but that doesn't mean that they weren't landing some nasty combos together, which just goes to show that their chemistry is there, especially since they were fighting against the strongest sorcerer of all time. I mean, them just fighting the strongest sorcerer and being able to keep up with him is more than enough to land them a spot in the top 3. But this fight was honestly pretty short-lived, so I can't see myself ranking it any higher than it already is. Coming in at the number 2 spot for what's going to be Yuji's second best duo partner in the entire series. And honestly, I can see some people making an argument for the number 1 spot for this duo, but it's gonna be Yuji and Yuta, the two main characters of Jujutsu Kaisen. Much like every other fight on this list, Yuji and Yuta have only had one fight together, but their one fight together was against 20-Finger Sukuna during the Shinjuku Showdown arc. So they fought against the strongest version of Sukuna imaginable, and they were absolutely cooking in that fight. Sukuna could not breathe a single moment against the two of them. The moment Sukuna would get an upper hand on one of them, the other one would instantly step in, stop Sukuna in his tracks, and land a nasty punch. Sukuna was literally getting ragdolled by both Yuta and Yuji. Not only were they pummeling Sukuna in hand-to-hand combat throughout the entire fight, but they were also combining their curse techniques in order to make the fight that much harder for Sukuna. You had Yuji's blood manipulation, which at one point he used to blow off a chunk of Sukuna's face, and then you had all of Yuta's copied abilities such as Angel's curse technique and Uro's sky manipulation. Overall, they had an amazing performance against the strongest sorcerer in all of history in his peak physical form. So, I don't think there should be much debate as to why this duo belongs in the top 2. Now, coming in at the number 1 spot for Yuji's best duo in the entire Jujutsu Kaisen series, it is going to be Yuji Itadori and Todo. I think this is easily, by far, the best duo in the entire series, and in fact, I think when they're together, they're practically unbeatable. First off, Yuji and Todo have not had just one fight together, not 2 fights, but 3 separate fights. and they've had a 100% success rate on all 3. Their opponents have not been any jokes either. Their first opponent was Hanami, a special grade disaster curse, and they pummeled Hanami. When I say pummeled, I mean pummeled. Todo's technique, combined with Yuji's physical abilities, is unmatched. You cannot predict where Yuji is going to come from, and you cannot predict where Todo is going to come from. Their chemistry is top-notch. It's like nothing ever seen before in Jujutsu Kaisen. Hanami was getting hit left and right with Yuji's black flashes, thanks to Todo constantly swapping their positions. You cannot predict where an attack is going to come from with them. Their next fight was up against a fully awakened Mahito during the Shibuya arc. And much like Hanami, Mahito also didn't know where their attacks were going to come from. In fact, he was getting beat on so bad, he had to specifically target Todo's hand in order to somehow render Todo out of the fight, so he actually had a fighting chance. And even while Todo was out of the fight, he still managed to somehow trick Mahito into thinking that Todo was going to swap them, which allowed Yuji to land the final blow against them. The fact that Todo couldn't even use his curse technique, and he still managed to aid Yuji, just goes to show how insane of a duo this truly is. Moving on to their final fight together, which was against Sukuna, and even the King of Curses couldn't stand a chance against this duo because he couldn't predict a single attack, much like Mahito and much like Hanami. He didn't know when Todo was going to swap or when he wasn't going to swap, which allowed Todo and Yuji to pummel Sukuna just like they did Mahito and Hanami, and Yuji landed a black flash at the very end of their fight together. Todo also allowed Yuji to land a soul-splitting dismantle onto Sukuna because of how much he was swapping Yuji. So, I don't think there should be any doubt that this duo is not only Yuji's best duo partner in Jujutsu Kaisen, but also the best duo in the entire series. Anyways, with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what other videos you guys want to see in the future. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.